right, so it is 12:45 and I only have 10 minutes for this DrupalCon lightning talk brought to you by the sponsors of Civic Actions, where I work. So let's get started. So my talk today is the 5 ways that Drupal helps us bake accessibility into every project. And we'll get into the finer details of that. But first, I wanted to talk about mostly accessibility. Why is it important? First, it's in many countries, it is the laws and regulations. In Canada, we do have, a law that our sites have to be up to WCAG 2.1, as well as 1 billion people in the world, which is pretty much 15% of the world's population, experience some form of disability. And pretty much every person deserves an equal opportunity, right? So everyone should be able to engage in all sites and as well as engage in the back end and being able to work, as well as just the right thing to do. Just make sure that our sites are up to date, they're available to everybody and everybody can see them. But what do these disabilities look like? So I have this small little video where I found a Google Chrome extension, and it kind of gives you like a little bit of what would some of these disabilities look like. And so I'll press play here so we can see it. So there's no audio, so you don't need to hear anything. So this is just me opening up the disability simulator. Now, these are just like probably the one of God knows how many disabilities there are out there. So there are like, these are just touching on just a few. The first one is dyslexia. The reason why I'm showing this is because for me as dyslexia, I knew the terminology, I knew what it meant. But until I saw it in person, I actually didn't know what it was. I didn't understand the problem that these people face. And especially with like different kind of colors for color blindness, there's so many different things that people see in terms of us trying to make sure we get the perfect color for the client. But really, like, there are millions of people around the world, that are seeing it actually quite different than we see it. So it's one thing to kind of, take into a pause to remember that, just because we can't see it or know what it is, doesn't mean that like we should just exclude it and we should just forget about it. There are just so many different things that we need to remember when building our sites. And so those are just some of the few things. Again, it's the Google Chrome applicator that I'm using here. Let's stop that video and move on. So some of the things that I wanted to talk about today that helps, Drupal already start out of the gate great with these key ingredients. So let's talk about these key ingredients. So first one is alternative text. So now it is built in as required. Again, this is all for Drupal 9 and up. So turning it off would require a developer's extra work. And really, like, you shouldn't be turning it off. We need to help remind clients that, if the image can't load for whatever reason, then the alt text will appear. And it gives, great audio help for your audience, like your users, to be able to know what this image is. So it's pretty much, you got to tell your client that, describe the image to somebody like as you would to somebody on the phone. And that's kind of what the alt text really is. And that is, required, and we need to make sure that this happens. So this is great that this is just right there built in for Drupal. Next will be the skip navigation. Now this is built in, so we don't need to add this anymore if it's a client's request. And that is when you do the first tab, the first thing you're going to hit is the skip to main content. And for screen readers, this can help users skipping past the header, especially if it's a news site that they visited so often, they don't need to know the main navigation. They just want to jump to the article title and read the content. So this is really great. That's already built in. There's nothing else for us to do, but it's just good for us to know it's there and to make sure that we acknowledge it and, we let the clients know it's there as well. Next is field sets. So field sets are, the fields containing checkboxes or radios. So they are now by default wrapped in a field set element, which includes the legend for when creating forms. So this is required for WCAG 2 and up. If the legend, you don't want it to be shown for whatever reason, it's just better to add visually hidden with CSS rather than kind of going into Twig template and removing it. So just remind them that, we really should be showing a lot of these labels and legends, but if down to the point we need to get rid of it, use visually hidden so that way it's still heard by the screen reader for any users with accessibilities. Next is form labels. So again, another one, default to Drupal. It adds a label to any form element. And this helps for screen readers. It helps us for knowing that the label is there, and we should always set it to above or in line. That makes it much more, easier to read for a person who can see the page, and as well easier for any screen readers, being able to decipher for the user and tell them what they're doing, where they are. And again, it's required for WCAG 2, so it's built right into Drupal out of the box. And last, the fifth one that helps us is the drag and drop by tabbing. So usually you would just sort of like grab with your mouse, click and drag. But now we can actually use it with keyboards. So it's still, I would say, not fully there. We still need some focus CSS elements that need to be adjusted, but we are definitely well on the track for using this. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring attention to this one is that we are really creating accessibility for people, anybody to really work in Drupal. And anybody can work in the Drupal behind the scenes, and not just be accessible clients, but be accessible Drupal developers. So this really can bring the world together and really create more jobs for everybody. And we're a Drupal community, so we got to stay a community. So that is my presentation. I may have gone a little bit too fast just because I was nervous. This is my first one talk speaking at DrupalCon. The Drupal plugin I can get for you as the Disability Simulator. So I'll put it here. So we can just go Google Disability Simulator, if I can spell. So there are a few different ones out there, but I was using one with, it looks like an S. But there are a few different Google Chrome plugins that we can use just to kind of get your head wrapped around, like, disability and what you got to think about, especially when you're front end developing or, you're a designer creating, any pages. As well, we do have a Civic Actions booth that everyone can check out if you have any questions about this later. No coffee. Thank you, Mike, for adding that. That is the, yes, that's the Chrome plugin that I was using. Everyone in the chat, if you wanted to check it out, I find it's very helpful. Yes, pretty much, like I like to tell people, how would you describe it to someone on the phone? Keep it simple, but keep it, be descriptive. So. $12:54, so we got one more minute. If anybody had any questions before this event leaves, I do appreciate everyone coming to check me out today. Unfortunately, I don't have any suggestions on making CAPTCHA ADA compliant. I'm not sure if anybody else can chime in on that one for Jamie, but good question. All right, well, that was my lightning talk. Hope everyone has a great time at DrupalCon and hope to see you around.